So here's a heavy question for you. What if the very foundation of South Africa's democracy, its justice system, is being systematically undermined from the inside? That's the explosive allegation we're digging into today. We're going to follow the source material, look at the evidence, and see what it all suggests about the health of one of the most celebrated constitutions on the continent. Think about that for a second. A tilted stage. It's such a powerful metaphor, right? It's not saying the whole system is totally broken or corrupt, but that it might have been subtly, almost invisibly manipulated, just enough so that certain people, well, they get away with things. The real question is, who's got their hands on the controls that tilt that stage? Okay, so what's the mechanism behind this alleged capture? It all comes down to a policy called Cadre deployment. Now, this thing started with a really noble goal, to transform and diversify the government after apartheid. But here's the twist. Critics are now saying it's been warped into a tool for putting political loyalists into incredibly powerful positions, including judgeships. To build this case, the source material pieces together what it calls an evidence network, and we're going to follow that trail. We'll look at a fugitive who basically vanished into thin air, a secret political fund that's been sealed from the public, a really chilling warning from the nation's top judge, and a pattern of justice that seems to go way, way back. So let's start connecting the dots. But before we dive headfirst into all that evidence, we really need to get our heads around the policy at the center of this whole thing, cadre deployment. I mean, where did it come from? And how did a policy that was supposed to be about transformation, allegedly, become a tool for capture? To really get the hope of 1994, you have to understand the horror that came before it. You're talking about the Sharpeville massacre, the death squads of the 80s. South Africa was a nation just deeply scarred by injustice. So the new constitution, that was a promise of a totally different future, one built on equality and, crucially, an independent judiciary. Cadre deployment was supposed to be one of the tools to build that future. And right here, you see the two faces of that policy. On one side, you have the noble promise to build a government that actually looks like the people it serves. On the other, the harsh critique that it's just created a loyalty lottery, where what matters isn't what you know, but who you know and how loyal you are to the party. And this isn't just an abstract political debate. This has real-world consequences. Just look at these numbers. Public trust in the justice system is tanking. According to Afrobarometer, less than half the population trusts the judiciary, and even fewer trust the National Prosecuting Authority. That is a full-blown crisis of faith in the very institutions that are supposed to hold the country together. All right, now let's get into untangling this evidence network. We're going to look at the historical roots of the problem, the legal loopholes that might be letting it happen, the political games behind the scenes, and the absolutely devastating human cost of it all. The story, according to the source, starts all the way back with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It was supposed to heal the nation's wounds. But the source points to what it calls a lopsided ledger. See, of the hundreds of cases recommended for prosecution, only cases against apartheid-era officials have really been pursued. And cases against the ANC, according to these records, zero. Not a single one brought to court. Now, this isn't just some dusty old history lesson. The argument is that this pattern of selective justice, where some people are held to account and others just aren't, created a culture of impunity that is still alive and well today. It's like it's set a precedent that has effectively poisoned the well of justice in South Africa. Okay, now for the legal evidence. And frankly, this is a bombshell. The very group that picks the nation's judges, the Judicial Service Commission, is overwhelmingly stacked with politicians. Get this. For every 3 judges on the commission, there are 10 political appointees. The source argues this is just a recipe for political interference. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The country's own top judge, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, has been sounding the alarm. He called the number of judges on the commission woefully low and flat out warned of a significant risk of political capture. When the guardian of the law itself is saying that, you've got to listen. And if you want a perfect example of how all this can fail the people, look no further than the Shepherd Bushiri case. Here's a guy accused of massive fraud. The authorities warn he's a flight risk, and he's inexplicably granted bail. And what happens next? Of course, he flees the country. And the kicker? When Malawi tried to send him back, the South African state apparently dragged its feet for so long that a foreign court threw the whole thing out. It's a story of either stunning incompetence or something much, much worse.
The political evidence just paints this incredibly damning picture. You've got court cases forcing thousands of political appointments out into the open. You have a Dizondo Commission uncovering this massive web of corruption. You have a secret political fund with its donors hidden from public view by a court order. And then the bombshell. That same fund gets linked to a hospital heist. You see how these threads start to weave together? But it's so easy to get lost in the politics and the power plays. We have to remember, this isn't just about abstract issues. This is about real people. People whose lives have been completely shattered by a justice system that allegedly has failed them again and again.
Remember Shepherd Bushiri? His victims, 79 of them, lost everything. Remember that Tembisa hospital heist? It cost a brave whistleblower, Babita Deokaran, her life. And those thousands of families still waiting for justice after apartheid? Yeah, they're still waiting. These are the faces of a system in crisis. This is the human cost. This is why it matters. Okay, but to be fair, is there another side to the story? Let's take a look at the counter-arguments. Is there a different, maybe less sinister explanation for what's been going on in South Africa's justice system?
So the main defense of Cadre deployment you'll hear is that it was an absolutely necessary tool for transformation. And it's a powerful point. I mean, how else do you dismantle a system that was built on racial inequality without actively promoting diversity and making sure the state reflects its people?
But here's the thing. The Zondo Commission, that massive years-long inquiry into state capture, drew a really critical line in the sand. It basically said that while transformation is essential, a system where political loyalty becomes the only thing that matters is a recipe for disaster. It just opens the door to incompetence and corruption, and it ends up destroying the very institutions you were trying to fix.
All right, but what if this isn't even political? What if it's just logistics? I mean, the justice system is famously underfunded and overwhelmed. And then the COVID-19 pandemic threw a massive wrench in the works. So is it possible these huge delays are just the result of a system that's struggling to keep its head above water?
Well, a foreign court saw things very differently. In the Bushiri case, the Malawian High Court used some very specific and very damning language. It didn't just mention delays. It cited bad faith and oppressive delays. Now, those are legal terms that suggest this wasn't an accident. They suggest a deliberate attempt to obstruct justice. And that is a world away from a simple logistical problem.
So, where do we go from here? The evidence has been laid out, the stakes are incredibly high. What's the path forward? What can actually be done to restore faith in a justice system that so many people feel is on the brink? The solution, according to the source material, is basically a three-pronged attack. First, fix the system. Reform the Judicial Service Commission to get politics out of the appointment process. Second, make sure merit is king, that appointments are transparent and based on skill, not loyalty. And third, break the cycle. End the culture of impunity by holding everyone accountable, no matter who they are. And so we land on this final, crucial question. The evidence is on the table. The potential solutions are there. But is anything actually going to change? The source argues that, at the end of the day, it's up to the citizens to demand a justice system that is truly independent, impartial, and fair for everyone. The real question is, will that call be answered?